The stranger's fingers brushed hers as he handed back her dropped pen, and Daisy Brennan heard herself say, "I think you're the one." Before her brain could stop her traitorous wine-soaked mouth, she wanted to dissolve into the marble floor of the castle ballroom. Around them, masked figures swirled in silk and diamonds, the charity masquerade she'd spent 6 months planning, now bearing witness to her humiliation. The man before her stood perfectly still, his silver mask catching the chandelier light. White hair fell to his shoulders. His skin held the luminous quality of moonlight on snow. "I'm so sorry," she gasped, face burning. "That was the wine talking. I mean, you're probably very nice, but I don't actually... God, please forget I said anything." He reached up and removed his mask. Daisy's breath caught. She'd seen beautiful men before. This was something else entirely. Elegant bones, pale lips, eyes the color of winter storms, ancient eyes, knowing eyes, eyes that had seen centuries pass and empires fall. "I know," he said quietly. His voice carried the weight of velvet and shadows. "I've known since I first saw you." The world tilted sideways. "I don't understand," she whispered. 3 months ago, you came to audit this venue for tonight's event. You stood in the center of this ballroom with your clipboard, calculating sightlines and fire exits, and I watched you from the gallery. You tapped your pen against your lips when you were thinking. You had paint on your sleeve from helping set up backdrops at the children's hospital that morning. I knew then. Daisy's heart hammered against her ribs. "Who are you?" "Nikolai Lysander." He offered his hand properly now, formal and old world. "I own this castle, among other things." She'd heard the name. Everyone in the city had. Reclusive billionaire, real estate magnate, collector of art and antiquities. There were rumors, of course, the kind that swirled around anyone that wealthy and private. But standing here, looking into those impossible eyes, Daisy suddenly understood the truth her rational mind had always dismissed. "You're one of them," she breathed. "The stories are real." Yes. A vampire. She was talking to a vampire. The Vampire King. If the whispered legends held any truth, her event planning contract had been negotiated through his assistant. She'd never expected to actually meet him. "Are you going to kill me?" Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Something flickered across his perfect features. Pain, maybe, or regret. "Never. I would burn this city to ash before I let harm come to you." The intensity of his words should have terrified her. Instead, warmth spread through her chest, foreign and undeniable. She'd felt it the moment he'd touched her hand. Recognition. Like coming home to a place she'd never been. "That's insane," she said. "You don't know me. I know you donate half your salary to the children's wing at St. Catherine's. I know you talk to stray cats and carry granola bars for homeless veterans. I know you cry at symphony orchestras and spend your Sundays painting sets for community theater. I know the exact shade of gold your eyes turn in candlelight. I know you prefer tea to coffee, but drink coffee anyway because it makes you feel more professional. I know," he stopped himself, jaw tightening. "Forgive me. I've said too much." Daisy's hands trembled. She set down her wineglass before she could drop it. "How do you know all that?" "Because I haven't been able to stop watching you since that first day." The confession emerged raw, unguarded. "Because you walk through the world like sunlight, and I have lived in darkness for 600 years. 600 years. The number should have made him alien, incomprehensible. But all Daisy could see was the loneliness etched into every elegant line of him, the way he held himself apart even as he stood close enough that she could feel the unnatural coolness of his presence. "I don't know what to say," she admitted. "Say you'll let me see you again. Properly, without masks or pretense." His hand lifted, then dropped as though he'd thought better of reaching for her. "Say you feel even a fraction of this pull between us." She should run. Every survival instinct screamed at her to smile politely and back away from the immortal predator. Instead, she found herself nodding. "Tomorrow night, there's a gallery opening in the Arts District. I was planning to go alone. May I accompany you?" "Yes." The smile that crossed his face transformed him. For just a moment, the ancient weight lifted, and he looked young, hopeful. It broke something in Daisy's chest and rebuilt it stronger. "Tomorrow, then." He bowed, a gesture from another century, and melted back into the crowd. Daisy stood alone in the center of her perfectly executed event, surrounded by the city's elite drinking and dancing and congratulating her on the beautiful venue. None of them knew, none of them saw the truth hiding beneath corporate donations and champagne. She pressed a hand to her racing heart. Whatever she'd just started, there would be no walking away from it unscathed. The gallery glowed with soft industrial lighting, exposed brick walls displaying massive abstract canvases. Daisy had arrived early, nerves making her hands flutter over her dress. She'd changed outfits 4 times before settling on deep green silk that made her auburn hair look like burnished copper. Nikolai appeared exactly on time, drawing stares as he moved through the crowd. He wore black, perfectly tailored, his white hair pulled back to reveal the sharp beauty of his face. People parted for him instinctively, drawn and repelled in equal measure. "You came," Daisy said, hating how breathless she sounded. "Did you doubt I would?" "Maybe. This is crazy. Last night feels like a dream." His eyes softened. "If it is, I have no desire to wake." They walked through the exhibition together. Nikolai spoke about art with the ease of someone who'd watched movements rise and fall, who'd known the masters personally. He gestured to a painting of a Venetian canal and mentioned offhandedly that the colors were accurate, that he remembered the way light hit the water in 1645. "What was it like?" Daisy asked. "Venice in the 17th century?" "Beautiful, brutal. The plague had come and gone. The city was rebuilding itself, defiant. I attended carnivals that lasted weeks, watched Monteverdi conduct his final operas." His gaze grew distant. "It was also the year I lost someone I loved." Daisy's chest tightened. "I'm sorry. It was a long time ago. Time doesn't make loss hurt less. It just makes it familiar." He looked at her then, really looked, and she felt stripped bare under that gaze. "You understand. Most mortals think immortality means we forget, that we move on easily because we have endless years to do so. That's stupid. Love doesn't work like that." "No, it doesn't." He turned back to the painting, and Daisy saw the tension in his shoulders. A wall going up, brick by brick. Perhaps this was a mistake. "What was?" "This. Us. I shouldn't have asked you here." The rejection stung like a slap. "Why not?" "Because I am selfish enough to want you, and wise enough to know better." His voice went flat, controlled. "You deserve someone who can give you a normal life. Marriage, children, growing old together. I can offer you none of those things. Shouldn't I decide what I deserve?" "You don't understand what you're asking for." Anger sparked in Daisy's chest. "Then explain it to me. Don't just shut me out because you've decided what's best for me." Nikolai moved closer, and suddenly the gallery felt too warm. "I have lived for 6 centuries. I will live for 6 more, perhaps 60 more. Everyone I have ever loved has turned to dust. Do you comprehend what that means? To watch the light fade from eyes you cherish, to stand at grave after grave, to carry the weight of all that loss until you can barely remember who you were before grief?" His hand rose to her cheek, the touch feather light and desperately gentle. "I swore I would never endure it again. And then you walked into my ballroom with your clipboard and your sunshine smile. And I knew I was damned." Daisy's throat burned with tears. "So what? You're just going to walk away? Protect yourself by denying us both what we already feel?" "I'm trying to protect you." "From what? A few happy years because you're too afraid of the ending to live through the middle?" He flinched as though she'd struck him. Good. She wanted him to feel this, wanted to crack through that careful control. "It's not just fear," he said quietly. "There are expectations. My world operates under different rules. The vampire court would never accept a mortal consort. There are alliances to consider, political ramifications you cannot imagine." "Politics!" She spat the word. "You're an immortal king and you're worried about politics?" "I am responsible for the safety of hundreds of my kind. My choices affect more than just myself." "That's an excuse and you know it." Nikolai's eyes flashed silver, and for a heartbeat, Daisy saw the predator beneath the gentleman. "You think you know me after one night and an evening at a gallery? I think you're terrified. I think you've built walls so high you've forgotten what it feels like to be vulnerable. And I think you want me just as much as I want you, but you're too busy measuring the cost to see the value." Silence stretched between them, brittle and aching. "You should go," Nikolai finally said. "This was a mistake." Daisy's hands balled into fists. "Fine. Run away. Hide behind your duty and your grief, but don't pretend you're doing this for me. You're doing it for yourself." She turned and walked out of the gallery, vision blurred with furious tears. Behind her she felt Nikolai's gaze tracking her every step, but he didn't follow. The apartment felt hollow when she got home. Daisy curled on her couch, replaying the conversation, hating how right and wrong everything felt simultaneously. She'd known him for barely 24 hours. It was insane to feel this devastated, but the pull between them had been real. She knew it. He knew it. And he'd still walked away. Her phone buzzed, unknown number. She answered without thinking. "I apologize." Nikolai's voice filled her ear, low and rough. "That was cruel of me." "Yes, it was. I meant what I said about the complications, but you were also right. I'm afraid." Daisy closed her eyes. "I'm afraid too. This is terrifying. But I'd rather be terrified with you than safe without you." "Daisy." Her name on his lips sounded like a prayer. "I will hurt you. Perhaps not intentionally, but inevitably. Your nature is to be a dramatic immortal who overthinks everything. I got that part already." A surprised laugh echoed through the line. The sound wrapped around her heart and squeezed. "I haven't laughed like that in decades. That's depressing. You need better hobbies." "I'm beginning to think you might be right." A pause, heavy with things unsaid. "May I see you again? I promise to be less catastrophically self-sabotaging." "When?" "Now. I'm outside your building." Daisy scrambled to her window. 4 stories down, Nikolai stood on the sidewalk, phone to his ear, white hair gleaming under the streetlights. He looked up and waved. She was moving before conscious thought caught up, racing down the stairs in her gallery dress and bare feet. The night air bit cold when she burst through the lobby door, but Nikolai was there, solid and real. "You came," she said. "I lasted approximately 40 minutes before I realized that protecting myself meant nothing if it cost me you." "That's still pretty dramatic." "I'm 600 years old. Drama is inevitable." He reached for her hand, and this time he didn't pull away. His skin was cool but not unpleasant, like marble warmed by moonlight. "I cannot promise you forever. I cannot promise you easy. But I can promise you truth. And the truth is that I have been alone for so long, I forgot what it meant to want to be found. Until you." Daisy stepped closer, close enough to feel the unnatural stillness of him. No heartbeat, no breath. Just presence, concentrated and overwhelming. "I don't need forever. I just need real." "Then let me court you properly, by the old laws and the new. Let me show you my world and let me learn yours. Okay? Okay?" "Yes. Court me, date me, whatever you want to call it, but no more running away when it gets scary." Nikolai pulled her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles with devastating gentleness. "I vow it." The courting that followed was nothing Daisy could have anticipated. Nikolai appeared at her office with handwritten notes on cream paper, invitations to private concerts and midnight museum tours. He sent rare books he thought she'd enjoy, first editions with inscriptions from authors he'd known personally. He learned her coffee order and her schedule and the exact way she liked to spend Sunday mornings, but he also kept his distance, careful touches, chaste kisses, a formality that felt increasingly fragile. 3 weeks in, Daisy couldn't take it anymore. They were in his penthouse, a sprawling space of old-world elegance and modern convenience. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the glittering city. Nikolai had been showing her his collection of illuminated manuscripts, explaining the history of each piece with obvious passion. "Stop," Daisy said. He looked up, startled. "What's wrong?" "This," she gestured between them. "The distance, the careful propriety. I feel like I'm being interviewed for a position. I'm trying to be respectful." "I don't want respectful. I want real." Nikolai set down the manuscript, his movements controlled. "You don't know what you're asking." "Then show me." "Daisy, you've been holding yourself back since that first night. I can feel it. Every time I get close, you retreat. Why?" His jaw worked. When he spoke, his voice emerged strained. "Because if I allow myself the full measure of what I feel, I will not be able to let you go when the time comes." "What if I don't want you to let me go?" "You'll die." The words cracked through the elegant room. In 50 years, 60 if you're lucky, you will die, and I will still be here, exactly as I am now, carrying the memory of you for centuries. I have done this before. I will not endure it again. Daisy's chest ached. Is that what happened in Venice? You loved someone and lost them? Her name was Isabetta. She was mortal, vibrant, impossible to resist. I thought I could bear it. I thought her years would be enough. His eyes had gone distant, lost in memory. I held her as she died of fever. It took 3 days. She was 29 years old, and when she was gone, the grief nearly destroyed me. I swore I would never love a mortal again. But you're here, with me. Against all wisdom and self-preservation, yes. He turned to face her fully. You terrify me, Daisy Brennan, not because of what you are, but because of what you make me feel. When you laugh, I forget to measure the cost. When you look at me, I remember what it meant to be alive. And I know that losing you will be agony beyond words. But I cannot seem to walk away. Daisy moved to him slowly. She took his cold hands in her warm ones. I can't promise you it won't hurt when I'm gone. I can't make myself immortal. But I can promise you that however many years we have, I will fill them with enough light to last you centuries. That's not fair. But his voice broke on the words. Love isn't fair. It's terrifying and ridiculous, and it hurts, but it's also the only thing that makes any of this matter. Nikolai pulled her close, finally, all that careful distance shattering. He rested his forehead against hers. No breath, but she felt him shaking. I don't know how to do this, how to love you knowing how it ends. The same way I do, one day at a time. He kissed her then, properly, for the first time. Cool lips, gentle and desperate in equal measure. Daisy felt the 600 years of loneliness in that kiss, the weight of grief and the fragile, terrifying hope of beginning again. When they broke apart, his eyes had gone silver bright. I'm falling in love with you. I think I have been since that first day. Good, because I'm already gone. Something in him relaxed, the final wall crumbling. He laughed, the sound young and startled. You are extraordinary. I'm really not. I'm just too stubborn to let you self-sabotage this. Thank the old gods for your stubbornness, then. They sat on his antique sofa, and Nikolai told her stories of his long life. Not the grand moments of history, but the small ones. The way coffee had tasted when it first arrived in Europe. The sound of gas lamps being lit each evening in Victorian London. The first time he'd heard recorded music, and thought it was sorcery. Daisy curled against his chest, listening to the absence of heartbeat, and felt utterly content. There's something you should know, Nikolai said eventually. About my world. It's not just me. There's a court, a hierarchy, and they will not be pleased when they learn about you. Because I'm mortal? Because you represent a threat to carefully maintained alliances. There are expectations about who the vampire king should choose as a consort. Political marriages that solidify power structures. Sounds exhausting. It is, but it's also necessary. Our kind operates in the shadows. We survive through careful balance and strategic relationships. Daisy tilted her head to look up at him. Are you saying you're supposed to marry some vampire noble? It's been suggested, strongly, by the matriarch of the eldest bloodline. And what have you said? That I will choose my own path. But resistance has consequences. I'm asking you to walk into a complicated, potentially dangerous situation. I need you to understand that before we go any further. I understand that you're trying to protect me again, and I appreciate it. But I'm not fragile. I know you're not. That's part of why He stopped, shook his head. There's a gathering next week, a formal court assembly. I would like you to attend as my guest. It will make our relationship official. It will also paint a target on your back. Dramatic vampire politics. Got it. Daisy, I'm serious. She sat up, meeting his eyes directly. So am I. I'm not walking away because things get complicated. That's not who I am. If you want me at this gathering, I'll be there. You don't have to decide now. I already have. I'm in, Nikolai, fully, whatever that means. He stared at her for a long moment, and she watched emotions flicker across his ancient features. Fear, wonder, something that looked like reverence. I do not deserve you. Probably not. But you're stuck with me anyway. The gathering took place in the castle beneath the financial district, in chambers Daisy had never seen during her event planning. The elevator descended past the ballroom level, past the parking structure, into depths that shouldn't exist according to any building permit. The doors opened onto a space of impossible grandeur. Vaulted ceilings disappeared into shadow. Chandeliers held not candles, but some form of cold luminescence. Tapestries older than nations hung on stone walls, and everywhere, vampires. They turned as one when Daisy stepped out, Nikolai's hand warm in hers, white skin, white hair, eyes like storm clouds in winter ice, beautiful and terrible in equal measure. Daisy's human warmth felt painfully obvious. She was a candle flame in a gallery of marble statues. "Courage," Nikolai murmured, too quiet for anyone but her to hear. "I am here." They moved through the crowd. Vampires bowed to Nikolai, centuries-old predators showing deference to their king. But their eyes tracked Daisy with calculation, curiosity, and in some cases, barely concealed disdain. A woman approached, tall and regal in dark purple silk. Her white hair fell in elaborate braids, woven with what looked like actual diamonds. Power radiated from her like heat from a forge. "Nikolai." Her voice carried the weight of ages. "How unexpected to see you bring a guest to formal assembly." "Lady Vivian," Nikolai inclined his head. "May I introduce Daisy Brennan? Daisy, this is Lady Vivian Castell, matriarch of the Castell bloodline." Charmed, I'm sure. Vivian's smile didn't reach her eyes. A mortal, how delightfully quaint. "Careful, Vivian." Nikolai's tone went soft, dangerous. "You're speaking about someone under my protection." "Of course. Forgive me. I meant no offense." But her gaze on Daisy felt like being assessed by a predator, deciding whether to hunt or ignore. "I simply wonder at the choice, particularly when there are so many suitable matches within our own ranks." "I choose my own companions." "Indeed, as is your right as king. Though one might hope such choices would consider the broader implications for our community." Daisy felt Nikolai's hand tighten on hers. Before he could respond, she spoke up. "I'm not trying to cause problems. I didn't ask to fall for a vampire king, but I did, and I'm not apologizing for it." Vivian's eyebrows rose. "Bold. I can see why you're drawn to her, Nikolai. She has spirit." The word landed like an insult. "Unfortunately, spirit does not secure alliances, it does not strengthen bloodlines, and it certainly does not last." "That's enough." Nikolai's voice could have cut glass. "I speak only truth. The mortal will be dead in a blink of our eternal eyes, and you will be left alone again, nursing wounds that could have been avoided with a more practical choice." "My wounds are my own concern." "Are they? When the king is weakened by grief, all our kind suffer. We need strong leadership, Nikolai, not a ruler distracted by the slow decay of temporary affection." Daisy's face burned, but she refused to look away. "You talk about me like I'm not standing right here. Because in the grand scheme of our world, you are inconsequential. A footnote, a brief flicker." Vivian tilted her head, expression almost pitying. "I do not say this to be cruel. It is simply the nature of mortality. You will fade, he will endure, and this entire affair will become nothing more than a painful memory he carries for centuries." "Enough." Power rippled through Nikolai's voice, ancient and absolute. The room fell silent. "You will not speak to her that way. You will not diminish what we have, and you will remember that I am still your king, regardless of who I choose to love." Vivian's eyes flashed, but she bowed her head. "As you wish, my lord. I hope your mortal is worth the consequences." She glided away, leaving frost in her wake. Daisy's hands trembled. She'd expected resistance, but the casual cruelty of being dismissed as temporary, as insignificant, cut deeper than she'd anticipated. "Don't listen to her," Nikolai said quietly. "She's threatened by change, by anything that disrupts the old order." "She's not wrong, though. I am temporary. I am going to die while you stay the same. You are not inconsequential. Not to me. Not ever." But the damage was done. The evening stretched on, a parade of immortal politics and carefully worded judgments. Other vampires approached, some curious, some hostile. All of them made it clear that Daisy was an outsider. A mortal intruding where she didn't belong. By the time Nikolai finally let her out, Daisy felt scraped raw. They rode the elevator in silence. When they reached his penthouse, she pulled away from his touch. "Maybe Vivian is right," she said, voice small. "Maybe this is selfish. You're risking your position, your relationships, for something that won't last." "Stop." Nikolai caught her face in his hands, forcing her to look at him. This is exactly what she wanted. To make you doubt, to drive a wedge between us. But she's not wrong about the facts. I'm going to age and die. You're going to be alone again. How is that fair to you? Fairness has nothing to do with love, doesn't it? I don't want to be the reason you suffer for centuries. Then what do you suggest? That I let you go now to spare myself pain later? That I live safe and alone rather than risk grief? His eyes blazed. I have done that, Daisy. For nearly 400 years, I have chosen safety over connection, and I have been miserable, empty, going through the motions of existence without ever truly living. Until me? Until you. He pressed his forehead to hers. You make me feel alive again. You remind me why immortality might be a gift rather than a curse. And yes, losing you will destroy me, but having you, even for your brief mortal years, is worth that cost. Tears spilled down Daisy's cheeks. You can't know that. You haven't lost me yet. I lost Isabetta. I know exactly what's coming, and I'm choosing you anyway. Why? Because love is not mathematics. It's not a cost-benefit analysis. It's not logical or safe. It's the one thing in this long existence that makes any of it matter. His thumbs brushed away her tears. I would rather have 50 years with you and 600 years of grief than an eternity of hollow safety. That's insane. Yes, love usually is. Daisy laughed through her tears. We're both ridiculous. Undoubtedly. He kissed her softly. But we're ridiculous together. She wrapped her arms around him, pressing close to his unnatural stillness. Viviane's going to make this difficult, isn't she? Almost certainly. She has a candidate in mind for my consort, a vampire named Seraphine from an ancient French bloodline. It would be a powerful alliance. Do you love her? I've never even met her. It's purely political. And if they pressure you? If the court demands you choose someone more suitable? Nikolai pulled back to look at her directly. Then I will tell them that I am 600 years old. I have led them through plague and war and revolution, and I have earned the right to choose my own heart. They can accept it or challenge me. Either way, you are my choice. The fierce certainty in his voice made Daisy's chest tight. I don't want to cost you your kingdom. You won't. Vivian is powerful, but she's not foolish enough to actually move against me. She'll bluster and scheme and make things uncomfortable. But ultimately, the court respects strength, and choosing what I want despite their disapproval demonstrates strength. Vampire logic is weird. You have no idea. They spent the night talking, curled together on his sofa while the city glittered below. Nikolai told her more about court politics, the delicate balance of bloodlines and territories. Daisy told him about her childhood, her dreams, the normal human things that fascinated him endlessly. What do you want? He asked at one point. In the long term, the life you imagine for yourself. Daisy considered. I want to keep doing work that matters, keep helping people, maybe start my own event company, focus on fundraisers for causes I believe in. I want a home that feels warm. I want to travel, see all the places you've already been, and hear your stories about them. She paused. I want to be happy, and I want to make you happy for however long we have. You already do. Yeah? More than you know. He threaded his fingers through hers. I should tell you, there are ways to extend mortal life. Not immortality, but decades beyond the normal span. Medical technology has advanced considerably, even in my lifetime. And there are certain practices, blood exchanges that can strengthen and preserve. No. Daisy's voice came out sharper than intended. I don't want that, Nikolai stilled. You don't want more time? I don't want you keeping me alive artificially because you're afraid of losing me. That's not love, that's control. I wasn't suggesting control, just options. Options that change what I am. I'm human, Nikolai, mortal. That's part of who I am, part of what this is. If you try to make me into something else, even partially, we lose that. He was quiet for a long moment. You're right. I apologize. I was thinking of myself, not you. I know, and I get it, but I need you to promise me something. Anything. Promise me you won't try to turn me. Not now, not ever. Not even if I'm dying and begging you to save me. I need to know you'll let me be human all the way through. His face went carefully blank. That's a difficult promise. I know, but I need it. I need to know this is real. Not just you trying to recreate something you lost. I'm not Isabetta. I'm not a substitute for immortality. I'm me, mortal and temporary, and you need to be okay with that. I am okay with it, in theory, but if you were actually dying, asking becomes exponentially more complicated. Promise me anyway. Nikolai closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they held centuries of pain. I promise. I will not turn you. Even if every instinct I have screams otherwise, I will honor your mortality and your choice. Thank you. Don't thank me. You've just asked me to commit to the hardest thing I've ever done. Daisy kissed him, soft and lingering. I know, but it means everything. The weeks that followed settled into a rhythm. Daisy continued her work, booking events and fundraisers with renewed energy. Nikolai appeared at her apartment most evenings, bringing dinner or books or simply his presence. They talked for hours. They explored the city together in the quiet hours after midnight, when his kind could move more freely. They learned each other in the thousand small ways that build intimacy. And Daisy fell more deeply in love with every passing day. She loved his dry humor, the way he'd comment on modern technology with the bemusement of someone who remembered life before electricity. She loved how he listened when she talked about her work, asking questions that showed he actually cared. She loved the way he touched her, careful and reverent, as though she were something precious. She even loved his dramatic tendencies, the way he could turn a simple dinner into an event complete with vintage wine and handwritten menus. You're ridiculous, she told him one night as he presented her with a first-edition poetry book because she'd mentioned liking Keats. I am a vampire king with 600 years of resources. I'm going to use them to spoil you. I don't need grand gestures. I know, that's why they mean something. Life felt almost normal, almost easy. She could almost forget about vampire politics and immortal complications. Then the invitation arrived. Heavy cream paper, sealed with actual wax, elegant script requesting Daisy's presence at a formal dinner hosted by Lady Vivian Castell. Don't go, Nikolai said immediately when she showed him. Why not? Because Vivian doesn't do anything without ulterior motive. This is a trap of some kind. Or it's an olive branch. Maybe she's trying to accept the situation. Nikolai looked at her like she'd grown a second head. Vivian has spent 4 centuries perfecting the art of manipulation. She's not extending olive branches. She's maneuvering. Then let her maneuver. I'm not afraid of her. You should be. Daisy set the invitation down. I'm not going to hide from your world. If I'm going to be part of your life, I need to learn to navigate it. That includes dealing with people who don't like me. She's not people. She's a 300-year-old vampire with significant political power and a vested interest in seeing our relationship fail. Then I'll be careful. But I'm going. Nikolai ran a hand through his white hair, frustration evident. You're impossible. You like that about me. I'm beginning to regret it, but he didn't try to stop her. Instead, he spent the next 3 days preparing her, teaching her the subtle protocols of vampire society, the proper forms of address, the hidden meanings in seemingly innocent questions. He drilled her like she was going into battle. Remember, Vivian will try to make you feel inferior. Don't take the bait. I've dealt with difficult clients before. Not like this. Vivian operates on a completely different level. I'll be fine. I'm going with you. You weren't invited. I don't care. I'm not letting you walk into that alone. Nikolai, this is not negotiable. Either I accompany you, or you don't go. Daisy considered arguing, but the fear in his eyes stopped her. Okay, together then? The dinner took place in Vivian's estate on the outskirts of the city. The building rose like a Gothic cathedral, all spires and stained glass and ancient stone. Inside, it was a museum of wealth and time. Artifacts from a dozen centuries, paintings by masters long dead, furniture that belonged behind velvet ropes. Vivian greeted them in a dining room that could have seated 50. Tonight, the long table held only 4 place settings. Nikolai, how unexpected. Her smile was razor sharp. I don't recall extending your invitation. Where Daisy goes, I go. How charmingly protective. Please sit, our other guests should arrive shortly. Daisy exchanged a glance with Nikolai. Other guests. This was definitely a trap. They sat, Nikolai positioning himself beside Daisy rather than at his traditional place of honor. A small rebellion, but Vivian's eyes narrowed at the slight. The other guests arrived moments later. A vampire couple, introduced as Lord and Lady Moreau, and a woman who made Daisy's breath catch. She was stunning even by vampire standards, white hair that fell in perfect waves, elegant features that could have been carved from alabaster. She wore crimson silk that hugged every curve, and she moved with the fluid grace of a dancer. Nikolai. Her voice held a French accent, warm and intimate. It's been too long. Seraphine. Nikolai's tone went carefully neutral. I wasn't aware you were in the city. Lady Vivian invited me. I couldn't refuse such a gracious offer. Seraphine's eyes slid to Daisy, assessing. And you must be the mortal I've heard so much about. Daisy Brennan. She forced herself to smile. Nice to meet you. Charmed. Seraphine took the seat across from them, her gaze lingering on Nikolai. You're looking well. Immortality continues to suit you. The dinner began. Course after course of food Daisy could barely taste. Conversation flowed in multiple languages, centuries of shared history that excluded her completely. Vivian orchestrated it beautifully, drawing out stories of battles and political victories, of the old courts in Paris and Rome and Vienna. And always, Seraphine at the center. Beautiful, sophisticated, immortal Seraphine who clearly had history with Nikolai. Do you remember the Winter Court of 1823? Seraphine asked at one point. The masquerade in St. Petersburg? We danced until dawn. I remember. Nikolai's hand found Daisy's under the table, squeezing gently. Those were simpler times, before the modern world complicated everything. Progress always complicates, Nikolai said evenly. Does it? Or do we simply convince ourselves that change is the same as improvement? Vivian leaned forward. Seraphine makes an excellent point. Our world operated very successfully for centuries under the old traditions, strategic alliances, careful breeding of bloodlines, stability through structure. Sounds suffocating, Daisy said before she could stop herself. Silence fell. Every vampire eye turned to her. I'm sorry? Vivian's tone could have frozen fire. Daisy's heart hammered, but she pushed forward. The old traditions, they sound suffocating. Deciding who you're going to love based on politics and bloodlines rather than actual feeling. Feelings are temporary, Seraphine said smoothly. Alliances last. Do they? Because from where I'm sitting, it seems like you're all more interested in control than connection. Careful, mortal. Lord Moreau spoke for the first time, voice like grinding stone. You speak of things you don't understand. Then explain it to me. Explain how arranged marriages and political maneuvering make anyone happy. Happiness is a luxury, Vivian said. Survival is necessity. Our kind has endured for millennia because we prioritize the collective over individual whims. Nikolai isn't a whim. What we have isn't a whim. It's temporary. You are temporary. And when you're gone, he will still be here, still leading, still bound by the responsibilities of his position. Vivian's gaze was almost pitying. You cannot give him children. You cannot strengthen alliances. You cannot even promise him more than a handful of decades. What you offer is sentiment. Sweet perhaps, but ultimately meaningless in the scope of immortal politics. What I offer is love. Real, honest, unconditional love, not a transaction. Love, Seraphine laughed, the sound musical and cruel. How delightfully naive. Do you truly believe that's enough? That feeling alone can sustain a relationship across the vast gulf of your incompatible natures? It's worked so far. For months, come speak to me after years, after decades, when you're old and fading and he's still exactly as he is now. See how your love feels when you can barely recognize yourself in the mirror while he remains eternally beautiful. The words hit like blows. Daisy felt her composure cracking. Nikolai stood abruptly. This dinner is over. Daisy, we're leaving. Sit down, Nikolai. Vivian's voice cracked like a whip. You agreed to hear us out. I agreed to nothing, and I will not sit here while you tear apart the woman I love to prove your political points. The woman you love today? But what about in 50 years? What about in 100, when the memory of her has faded and you realize what you sacrificed for temporary comfort? I will love her memory as much as I love her now. More perhaps because I will have been privileged to know her fully. He pulled Daisy to her feet. You want me to choose Seraphine because it's strategic, because it maintains the old order, because it's safe. But I stopped choosing safety the night Daisy told me I was the one, and I will not go back. Seraphine's perfect face remained calm, but something flickered in her eyes. Hurt, maybe, or wounded pride. I came here at Viviane's request because she said you might be ready to consider a proper match. I see now that was optimistic. I'm sorry if you were misled, but I have chosen. And my choice is Daisy. Your choice is a mistake. Vivian stood as well, power radiating from her like heat. You think this is rebellion, independence, but it's selfishness. You're thinking only of yourself, of your temporary feelings, and ignoring the broader implications. No, I'm thinking of what makes existence worthwhile, and for me, that's her. They left in a storm of fury and slammed doors. Nikolai drove in silence, jaw tight, hands gripping the wheel with unnecessary force. I'm sorry, Daisy said quietly. Don't apologize. None of that was your fault. They hate me. They hate change. You represent everything they fear. Disruption of the old order, emotion over strategy. The possibility that perhaps the way things have always been done isn't the only way. Seraphine is beautiful. Yes. And immortal. Yes. And perfect for you by their standards. Nikolai pulled over abruptly, turning to face her. She is also someone I have never loved, never desired, and never chosen. She is the safe option, the logical option, the option that makes everyone else comfortable. He cupped Daisy's face in his cool hands. But I don't want safe or logical or comfortable. I want you. Only you. Always you. Even though I'm going to get old and die? Even though. Especially though. Because your mortality is part of what makes you precious. Every moment with you is finite, irreplaceable. That's not a flaw. It's what gives us meaning. Daisy kissed him, desperate and aching. I love you. And I love you. More than I have words for. More than 600 years of language can express. They sat in the parked car, holding each other while the city moved around them. Daisy felt the weight of immortal disapproval pressing down, but she also felt Nikolai's certainty, his choice, his love. It would have to be enough. The next morning, Daisy woke to her phone ringing. Unknown number. Miss Brennan. A woman's voice, cool and professional. This is Catherine Wells, assistant to Lady Vivian Castell. Lady Vivian would like to meet with you privately. This afternoon, if possible. Daisy's stomach dropped. Why? She didn't specify. Simply asked that I arrange a meeting. Every instinct screamed to refuse, but curiosity and stubbornness won out. Where and when? They met at a cafe in the financial district, public and neutral. Vivian arrived exactly on time, dressed in tailored gray that somehow looked both modern and timeless. Thank you for coming, she said, taking the seat across from Daisy. I imagine you'd rather be anywhere else. Pretty much. Understandable. I was not kind last night. That's one way to put it. Vivian ordered tea with the precision of someone who'd been alive when tea ceremonies were first imported to Europe. I owe you an explanation. Perhaps not an apology, but an explanation. I'm listening. I have known Nikolai for 400 years. I have watched him suffer and retreat and rebuild himself in the wake of mortal losses. Isabetta's death nearly destroyed him. It took him 2 centuries to emerge from that grief. 200 years of watching him exist in shadow, going through the motions of leadership without any real engagement. Daisy's chest tightened. She hadn't known it had been that bad. When he finally seemed to be healing, I thought perhaps he'd learned, that he would choose more carefully next time. Choose someone who could match his immortality, who wouldn't leave him shattered. Vivian met Daisy's eyes directly. And then you appeared. Mortal. Temporary. Everything I feared. So you tried to drive us apart. I tried to protect him from another few centuries of grief. Yes. By treating me like I don't matter. By trying to make him see reason before he becomes too attached. Vivian sighed, a sound that held centuries of weariness. But I was wrong. Or perhaps not wrong, but ineffective. He's already attached, already in love, already committed to this path regardless of consequences. So why are we here? Because I am old enough to recognize when I've lost a battle, and pragmatic enough to change tactics. She leaned forward slightly. You make him happy. I cannot deny that. Last night, watching him defend you, I saw something I haven't seen in centuries. Fire, passion, the willingness to fight for what he wants rather than what he should want. And perhaps that's worth the eventual cost. Perhaps watching him truly live for 50 years is better than watching him exist safely for 500. Vivian's expression softened almost imperceptibly. I still think you're a mistake, but you're his mistake to make, and he's earned that right. Daisy didn't know what to say. This felt like acceptance, but grudging, conditional. I'm not going anywhere, she finally said. Whatever you or the court thinks of me, I'm staying. I know, that's why I'm here. Vivian pulled an envelope from her bag. This is an official recognition from the eldest bloodlines. It grants you status as Nikolai's acknowledged consort, not a full position in court hierarchy, but enough to stop the more aggressive challenges. Why would you do that? Because Nikolai will fight anyone who threatens you, and those fights will destabilize the careful balance we've maintained. Better to acknowledge the situation and minimize the damage. She slid the envelope across the table. This doesn't mean I approve. It means I'm choosing the lesser disruption. Should I say thank you? You should say you'll take care of him. That when your time comes, you'll make it as easy on him as possible. That you'll fill your years with enough joy that the memory sustains him through the grief. Daisy's throat burned. I'll try. That's all I can ask. Vivian stood, tea untouched. One more thing. There will still be vampires who oppose this, who see your mortality as weakness or opportunity. Stay close to Nikolai. Don't wander the city alone after dark. And if anyone approaches you with threats or offers, report it immediately. Offers? To turn you, to extend your life through less savory means. Some may see you as a potential weapon against Nikolai, use you to manipulate him. I would never. I know, but they don't. You're an unknown variable in a very old equation. That makes you dangerous to some and valuable to others. Be careful. She left without another word, disappearing into the afternoon crowd. Daisy sat alone with the envelope, her tea going cold. She'd won, sort of, gained recognition, if not acceptance. But Vivian's warnings echoed in her mind. This wasn't over. It might never be over. She called Nikolai. How did it go? He asked immediately. Weird. She gave me some kind of official status, said it would stop challenges. That's significant. Vivian doesn't compromise easily. She also warned me about vampires who might try to use me against you. Silence on the line. Then, carefully controlled, she's not wrong. There are factions that would see you as an exploitable weakness. Great. So now I'm not just temporary and inappropriate, I'm also a strategic liability. You're not a liability. You're precious, and I will protect you. I don't want to need protecting. I want to be your equal, not your burden. You are my equal, in every way that matters. Except I'm mortal and vulnerable and apparently a target. Daisy, I'm fine. I just need to process. She closed her eyes. Can you come over tonight? I could use the company. Of course, I'll bring dinner. Nikolai? Yes? I love you. Even when this is complicated and scary, I love you. And I love you. Always. That night, they didn't talk about vampire politics or mortal limitations. They cooked together in Daisy's tiny kitchen, Nikolai attempting to navigate modern appliances with comical results. They watched old movies and argued about the historical accuracy. They existed in the simple space of being together. And Daisy felt the truth settle in her chest. This was worth fighting for. Worth the complications and the danger and the inevitable heartbreak. Because these moments, these simple, perfect moments, were real in a way nothing else had ever been. Months passed. The vampire court adapted to Daisy's presence with varying degrees of grace. She attended formal gatherings on Nikolai's arm, learning the subtle hierarchies and ancient grudges. She made allies among the younger vampires, the ones who chafed under the rigid traditions. Her event business flourished, partially because Nikolai's resources opened doors, but also because she was genuinely good at what she did. She organized charity galas and fundraisers, pouring herself into work that mattered, and her relationship with Nikolai deepened into something unshakable. They had their first real fight over something ridiculous, whether to keep a stray cat Daisy had found. Nikolai pointed out that he was allergic. Daisy countered that he was literally undead and couldn't have allergies. They argued for an hour before dissolving into laughter at the absurdity. They kept the cat, named him Byron. Nikolai pretended to be annoyed, but Daisy caught him petting the creature when he thought she wasn't looking. They traveled together. Nikolai showed her Venice, walking her through narrow streets and pointing out places from his memories. They visited Vienna and Paris and Rome, cities he'd known in their previous incarnations. Daisy saw the world through his eyes, centuries of history layered over modern streets. And slowly, carefully, she began to understand what it meant to love someone immortal. It meant treasuring every moment because she knew how finite her moments were. It meant taking thousands of pictures because she wanted him to have memories when her face faded from living sight. It meant writing letters and journals, documenting their love so he'd have something tangible to hold when she was gone. It meant accepting that the ending was already written, but choosing to write the middle anyway. On their one-year anniversary, Nikolai took her back to the castle ballroom where they'd met. He'd had it decorated with thousands of white roses, candlelight making shadows dance across the marble floor. "I want to ask you something," he said, taking her hands in his. "And I need you to answer honestly." Daisy's heart raced. "Okay. Are you happy? Truly happy, or are you staying because you feel committed to something you started when you didn't fully understand the implications?" "I'm happy. Completely, ridiculously happy. Even with the complications, the court politics, the knowledge of how this ends, the fact that I can never give you certain normal things. Even with all of that," she squeezed his hands. "Why are you asking?" "Because I want to marry you. I want to make this official in every way possible. But I need to know that you want this too. That you're not just caught up in the romance of loving someone immortal." Daisy's breath caught. "You want to marry me? More than I've wanted anything in 600 years. I want to wake up next to you for whatever time we have. I want legal recognition and public declaration and binding commitment. I want—" His voice broke slightly. "I want to be your husband." "Yes." The word came out on a sob. "Yes. Absolutely yes." Nikolai kissed her, and the world fell away. Nothing existed except this moment, this man, this impossible love that somehow existed anyway. When they broke apart, he produced a ring, antique gold set with a deep blue sapphire surrounded by tiny diamonds. "This was my mother's, one of the few things I have left from my mortal life. I want you to have it." Daisy's hands shook as he slid it onto her finger. "It's beautiful. She would have loved you, would have loved your fierce heart and your stubborn courage. Tell me about her." So he did. They sat on the ballroom floor, surrounded by roses, and Nikolai told her about his mortal family. His mother, who had been a merchant's daughter, smart and kind. His father, who had taught him to read and fight with equal importance. His sister, who had died of fever when Nikolai was 16. "I was turned at 23, he said quietly. "A vampire named Constantine found me dying of plague. He offered me a choice, death or immortality. I was young and terrified, and I chose to live." He looked at Daisy with ancient eyes. "For 600 years, I've questioned that choice, wondered if I should have just let the fever take me. But tonight I'm grateful, because if I had died then, I never would have met you." "I'm grateful too," Daisy leaned into him. "For all of it, the impossible circumstances, the complications, even the pain that's coming. Because it led us here." They planned a wedding that blended mortal and vampire traditions, a ceremony in the castle open to both worlds. Daisy's human friends and family mixed with immortal court members in an unprecedented merging of societies. Her mother cried through the entire ceremony, whether from joy or fear Daisy couldn't tell. Her best friend served as maid of honor, visibly nervous but supportive. Her colleagues from the event planning world attended, most of them unaware that half the guests were predators in elegant clothing. Vivian came. She gave Daisy a nod of acknowledgement that felt like blessing and warning combined. The ceremony itself was simple. Nikolai had wanted elaborate old-world traditions, but Daisy insisted on something more intimate. They exchanged vows they'd written themselves, speaking truths that made even the ancient vampires shift uncomfortably. "I promise to love you for all of my days," Daisy said, voice steady despite her tears. "To fill our time with light and laughter and purpose, to never take a single moment for granted, to be your partner, your equal, your home." "I promise to love you beyond your days," Nikolai responded, "to carry you with me through all my remaining years, to honor your memory as much as I cherish your presence, to be worthy of the gift of your finite, precious time." They kissed as husband and wife, and the assembled crowd, mortal and immortal alike, erupted in applause. The reception was a study in contrasts. Daisy's grandmother danced with a vampire lord who'd fought in the War of 1812. Her college roommate bonded with a vampire artist over their mutual love of abstract expressionism. The cake was traditional. The champagne was older than some countries. Nikolai never left Daisy's side. They moved through the celebration together, his hand always finding hers, his eyes tracking her even when protocol demanded his attention elsewhere. "You look happy," Vivian said at one point, appearing beside Daisy while Nikolai was occupied with some diplomatic conversation. "I am happy." "Good. See that you stay that way. He deserves it." "So do I." Vivian's lips quirked in something that might have been a smile. "Yes, you do. Against all my expectations, you've proven yourself worthy of him. Don't waste it." "I don't intend to." The night wound down. Mortal guests left first, exhausted by late hours and rich food. The vampires lingered, drinking wine older than nations and discussing politics in languages Daisy was still learning. Finally, as dawn approached, Nikolai swept her into his arms. "Ready to leave our own wedding?" God, yes. He'd arranged a surprise honeymoon, a private island in the Mediterranean, accessible only by boat, completely isolated. 2 weeks of nothing but ocean and sky and each other. They spent their days exploring rocky beaches and swimming in crystal water. Daisy collected shells while Nikolai read aloud from books he'd brought, his voice turning poetry into music. They made love in the ocean, in their bed, on the beach under stars. They talked about everything and nothing. They existed outside of time. On their last night, Daisy lay in Nikolai's arms, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson. "I wish we could stay here forever," she said quietly. "So do I, but forever isn't possible for us." "No, but this is pretty close." Nikolai kissed the top of her head. "When you're gone, I will remember this, every detail, the way the light caught your hair, the sound of your laugh, the feeling of you in my arms. I will carry it for centuries." "That's a lot of weight to carry." "Worth it. 1,000 times worth it." Daisy turned to face him. "Promise me something else. When I'm gone, don't shut yourself away like you did after Isabetta. Let yourself grieve. But then let yourself live again. Find joy again. Honor what we had by not letting it destroy you." "I don't know if I can promise that." "Try. For me. Because I can't bear the thought of you suffering for centuries because you loved me. Your absence will hurt regardless." "I know. But there's a difference between grief and self-destruction. Promise me you'll choose grief, that you'll let it move through you instead of defining you." Nikolai was quiet for a long moment. "I promise to try. It's all I can offer." "Then it's enough." They returned to the city and settled into married life. Daisy moved into Nikolai's penthouse, filling the elegant space with her warmth. Plants appeared on windowsills. Photos covered previously bare walls. Byron the cat claimed the most expensive furniture as his personal territory. The space transformed from a museum of immortal solitude into a home. Daisy's business continued to grow. She hired staff, expanded her services, became known as one of the premier event planners in the city. She specialized in charity work, using her connections to Nikolai's world to secure donations in venues that other planners could only dream of. She also became something unexpected, a bridge between mortal and vampire societies. It started small. A vampire artist wanting to display work in a human gallery, a mortal historian seeking access to vampire archives. Daisy facilitated connections, negotiated misunderstandings, helped both worlds see past their prejudices. Vivian noticed. "You're making yourself useful," she said at one of the regular court assemblies Daisy now attended as Nikolai's wife. "I'm trying to make things better, for both sides." An ambitious goal. Maybe, but it's working. Slowly, but working. Indeed. Vivian studied her with something that might have been respect. "You've surprised me, Daisy Lysander. I expected you to be a distraction. Instead, you've become an asset." Should I be flattered or insulted? Both, probably. Vivian's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "You're good for him, for the court, for our people. I can admit when I was wrong." Was that an apology? "Don't push your luck." But Daisy caught the slight smile as Vivian walked away. Years passed. 5 became 10, became 15. Daisy aged gracefully, laugh lines appearing around her eyes, silver threading through her auburn hair. Nikolai remained exactly as he'd been, frozen in immortal perfection. She caught him sometimes, watching her with an expression of profound sadness, seeing the changes time wrote across her face, counting down to an ending he could calculate with devastating precision. "I'm not gone yet," she'd remind him. "Stop mourning me while I'm still here." "I'm not mourning. I'm memorizing." Same thing. No, mourning is regret. Memorizing is love. On their 15th anniversary, Daisy was diagnosed with cancer. Aggressive, advanced, the kind that had no good prognosis. She told Nikolai in their penthouse, the city glittering below them, Byron purring on her lap. She watched emotions flicker across his face too fast to track. Denial, rage, grief. And underneath it all, the terror of watching another person he loved slip away. "There are treatments," he said, voice carefully controlled. "The best doctors, experimental procedures. I can arrange anything." "I know, and I'll try them. But Nikolai, we both know how this is likely to end." "Don't." The word came out harsh. "Don't give up before we've even fought." "I'm not giving up. I'm being realistic." Realism is surrender dressed in practical clothing. "I want you to fight. I need you to fight." Daisy set Byron aside and went to him. She took his cold hands in her warm ones. "I will fight. I promise. But you need to prepare yourself for the possibility that fighting might not be enough. I'm not ready to lose you. I know, I'm not ready either, but this is the reality of loving someone mortal. You always knew it was coming." "Knowing and experiencing are vastly different things." His voice broke. "I thought we'd have decades more. You're only 40. It's too soon." "Life doesn't care about fair timing." "Then I'll make it care. I'll find a way to buy you more time." "Nikolai, no, you asked me not to turn you. I promised. But you didn't forbid me from using every other resource at my disposal. Medical science has advanced considerably. There are treatments, specialists, experimental trials. I will find something." Daisy wanted to argue, but the desperate hope in his eyes stopped her. "Okay, we'll try. But promise me you'll accept the outcome. Whatever it is, no last-minute turning me, because you can't let go." "I promised. I keep my promises. Even when it destroys you? Especially then." The next year was a blur of hospitals and treatments. Nikolai used his considerable resources to access cutting-edge medicine. Daisy endured chemotherapy and radiation, experimental drug trials that left her sick and exhausted. She lost her hair, lost weight, lost the easy energy she'd always taken for granted. But she didn't lose hope. Or more accurately, she didn't lose Nikolai. He was there for every treatment, every test, every bad night and small victory. He held her hair when she was sick, carried her when she was too weak to walk, read to her when pain made sleep impossible. He was patient and gentle and absolutely unwavering. "You don't have to do this," Daisy said one night after a particularly brutal round of chemotherapy. "I know this is hard for you. Where else would I be? Anywhere that doesn't involve watching me suffer. There is nowhere I would rather be than with you. Suffering or celebrating, I'm exactly where I belong. Tears slid down her cheeks. I'm scared. So am I. What if the treatments don't work? Then we'll have fought together, and I will carry that with me, your courage, your strength, the way you face this with grace instead of bitterness. I'm not always graceful. Sometimes I'm bitter and angry, and I hate every cell in my body that's betraying me. Those moments, too, all of it. I want all of you, Daisy. Every mood, every fear, every imperfect human moment. Don't hide from me now. So she didn't. She let him see her at her worst, sick and scared and furious at the unfairness, and he loved her through it without flinching. Against all odds, the treatments worked. Slowly, gradually, the cancer retreated. Scans came back clearer. Blood work improved. Energy returned in small increments. Daisy's doctors used words like remission and cautiously optimistic. Nikolai used words like miracle and stubborn, and cried tears of relief against her shoulder. You did it, he whispered. You fought and you won. We won. I couldn't have done this without you. You could have, but I'm grateful you didn't have to. Recovery was slow. Daisy rebuilt her strength, her body, her life. She'd had to step back from her business during treatment, but now she returned with renewed purpose. She reorganized her company to focus specifically on healthcare fundraising, using her experience to help other patients access the kind of cutting-edge treatment that had saved her life. She also started speaking about her experience at medical conferences, advocating for better research funding and patient support. She became a voice for those fighting similar battles. Nikolai watched her transform her trauma into purpose with obvious pride. You're extraordinary, he told her one evening as she prepared a presentation for a cancer research gala. I'm just trying to make something good come from something terrible. That's the definition of extraordinary. 5 more years passed. Daisy hit 45, then 50. Her hair grew back silver white, and she joked that now she matched all the vampires. Her body bore the marks of illness and recovery. But she was alive, thriving even. Her business had become a major force in charitable fundraising. She'd helped raise millions for medical research, children's programs, veteran support. She'd built something that would outlast her mortal years. And her marriage to Nikolai had deepened into something unbreakable. They'd weathered the worst and emerged stronger. They knew each other's fears and flaws and loved each other anyway. They'd built a life together that honored both their natures, his immortal perspective and her mortal urgency. On their 20th anniversary, they returned to the Mediterranean island where they'd honeymooned. We're older now, Daisy said, walking the same beach they'd walked 2 decades before. Grayer, at least I am. You're beautiful. You've always been beautiful. Even with all these wrinkles and scars, especially with them, they tell the story of your life, of our life together. Daisy stopped walking, turning to face him. I want you to know something. These 20 years with you have been the best of my existence. The cancer, the complications, all of it. I'd do it again in a heartbeat if it meant spending this time with you. Don't make me cry at our anniversary dinner. Too late. I'm on a roll. She took his hands. When I'm gone, and yes, eventually, I will be gone, despite my impressive stubbornness. I want you to remember that I died happy, that I got everything I wanted from life, love, purpose, joy. You gave me all of that. You gave it to yourself. I just had the privilege of witnessing it. We gave it to each other. That's how partnership works. They made love that night with the tenderness of long familiarity and the passion of remembered desire. Afterward, Daisy curled against Nikolai's cool chest, listening to the ocean. How many more years do you think we have? She asked quietly. According to your doctors, potentially decades. You're healthy now, strong. Barring unforeseen circumstances, you could easily live into your 80s. 30 more years, maybe 40? An eternity and an eye blink simultaneously. Yeah, she kissed his shoulder. Let's make them count. And they did. Daisy continued her work, expanding into new areas of advocacy. She started a foundation in her own name, funding research and patient support programs. She mentored younger event planners, teaching them to use their skills for social good. She also became a grandmother figure to the children of her staff and friends, since she and Nikolai had never had children of their own. She loved fiercely and broadly, spreading her warmth to everyone who needed it. Nikolai remained her constant. They traveled more, seeing the world together. They hosted elaborate parties that mixed mortal and vampire guests with increasing ease. They built traditions and inside jokes, and the accumulated treasure of decades together. The vampire court, once so resistant to their union, had grown to accept and even celebrate it. Daisy had proven herself valuable, her connections and advocacy benefiting both worlds. Younger vampires in particular looked to their relationship as proof that love could transcend the divide between mortal and immortal. Vivian, in her rare moments of candor, admitted that Daisy and Nikolai had changed vampire society for the better. "You've made us remember what we lost," she said once, "the ability to value finite moments, to see beauty in impermanence. It's a gift we'd forgotten we needed." At 60, Daisy's body began to slow more noticeably. Nothing dramatic, just the natural progression of age. She needed more rest. Stairs became challenging. Her memory occasionally faltered. Nikolai watched each change with visible pain, but he never once suggested turning her. He'd promised, and he kept that promise even as it clearly cost him. "I'm proud of you," Daisy told him one evening. "I know this is hard, watching me age. Every day is a war between gratitude and grief. Gratitude that I have you still, grief for every small loss. But you're not trying to fix it. You're letting me be mortal. Because you asked. Because I love you enough to honor your choices even when they hurt. That's real love, not the romantic fantasy version, the hard, messy, actual work of putting someone else's needs first. I learned that from you." At 70, Daisy began making more concrete plans for her death. She updated her will, arranged her funeral, wrote letters to the people she loved. She did it matter-of-factly, treating it as the practical necessity it was. Nikolai hated every moment, but he helped when she asked. "I want you to speak at my funeral," she said one afternoon while organizing her affairs. "I don't think I'll be capable of speech." "You will be, because you're strong, and you'll want to honor me properly." She handed him a folder. "I've written some thoughts, things I want said. You can use them or not, but at least you'll have a framework." He took the folder with shaking hands. "I hate this. I know. But it's important. I need to know you'll be okay after I'm gone. I will never be okay without you. You'll survive. You'll grieve, and eventually you'll heal, and you'll keep living. Because that's what I want for you. Not centuries of suffering, but centuries of carrying me with you while still being open to joy. You ask the impossible. I ask the difficult. There's a difference." At 75, Daisy's health began to decline more seriously. Not cancer this time, just the accumulated wear of a mortal body reaching its limits. Her heart struggled, her lungs weakened. She spent more time resting than active. Nikolai hired the best care, transformed their penthouse into a medical facility without losing its warmth. But they both knew what was coming. "I'm not afraid," Daisy said one evening as Nikolai helped her to bed. "I've had a full life, a beautiful life. I'm ready. I'm not ready to lose you. You'll never lose me. Not really. I'll be in every sunset you watch, every piece of art you collect, every moment of joy you allow yourself. I'll be the voice reminding you to live instead of just exist. That's not the same as having you here. No, but it's something. Hold on to that." Daisy Lysander died peacefully in her sleep 3 weeks later, at the age of 76. Nikolai was beside her, holding her hand, whispering how much he loved her until her last breath faded. The funeral was massive. Mortal and vampire communities came together to honor a woman who'd bridged both worlds, hundreds of people whose lives she'd touched, causes she'd supported, friends she'd made across 7 decades. Nikolai spoke as promised, his voice steady despite the grief tearing him apart. He talked about her courage, her stubborn optimism, her refusal to let anything cancer, vampire politics, mortal limitations stop her from living fully. He talked about how she'd taught him to value finite moments, to find meaning in impermanence, to love without fear. "She told me once that a finite life could be worth an infinite loss," he said, looking out at the assembled crowd. "I didn't understand then. I thought grief was too high a price for temporary joy. But Daisy showed me that the price is irrelevant when the gift is genuine. She gave me 54 years of light, and I will carry that light for the next 600 and beyond. She was worth every moment of pain, worth every tear, worth the centuries of missing her that stretch ahead, because she was real. She was mine. And she loved me enough to let me grieve her when the time came. There wasn't a dry eye in the assembly, mortal or immortal. The years after Daisy's death were brutal. Nikolai grieved deeply, the loss cutting through centuries of carefully maintained control. But he also remembered his promise. He let the grief move through him instead of drowning in it. He kept living. He maintained Daisy's foundation, expanding its reach in her honor. He continued hosting events that brought mortals and vampires together, maintaining the bridges she'd built. He spoke about her often, keeping her memory alive through stories and advocacy. And slowly, gradually, he healed. Not completely. The loss of Daisy left a permanent mark, but he learned to carry it differently. Not as a burden that crushed him, but as evidence of having loved and been loved deeply. 5 years after her death, Vivian found him in the castle ballroom, the same space where Nikolai had first told Daisy he knew she was the one. "You're surviving," Vivian said simply. "I'm trying." She'd be proud. "I hope so. I owe you an apology, one I should have given decades ago." Vivian's ancient eyes held genuine regret. "I was wrong about her, about what she would cost you. Yes, you're grieving, but you're also more alive than I've seen you in centuries. She didn't destroy you, she saved you." "She did. I'm sorry I didn't see that sooner. Sorry I tried to prevent it." Nikolai nodded slowly. "You were trying to protect me. I understand that now. But Daisy was right. Safety isn't the same as living." "No, it's not." Vivian touched his shoulder gently. "She changed all of us. Made us remember what it meant to value mortal connections. Several of the younger court members have begun forming relationships with mortals because of the example you two set. You've transformed our society." That was Daisy's gift. She made people better just by being herself. And she made you better. Don't forget that when the grief feels overwhelming. 10 years after her death, Nikolai established the Nikolai Lysander Memorial Fellowship, funding young people pursuing careers in charitable event planning and healthcare advocacy. He attended every graduation, presenting awards in her name, telling stories about her work. 20 years after her death, the castle ballroom where they'd met and married was officially renamed the Nikolai Lysander Hall. Nikolai stood at the dedication ceremony, surrounded by people whose lives Daisy had touched, and felt something he hadn't expected. Joy. Not the desperate, finite joy of mortal existence, but the deep, settled contentment of knowing he'd been part of something meaningful, that his years with Daisy had mattered, that her influence continued rippling outward, touching lives, changing perspectives, building bridges. He would grieve her for centuries to come, but he would also celebrate her, remember her, honor her by continuing to live the way she'd taught him, fully, bravely, with an open heart, despite the inevitable pain. Because Daisy Brennan Lysander had been right about everything that mattered. A finite life could absolutely be worth an infinite loss. Love, measured by depth, not duration, was the only thing that gave immortal existence meaning. And Nikolai had loved and been loved by someone extraordinary. That would be enough to sustain him through whatever centuries stretched ahead. He stood in the ballroom that now bore her name, surrounded by flowers and light and the echoes of their first meeting, and he whispered to the memory of the woman who'd changed everything, "Thank you for seeing me, for choosing me, for teaching me that living was worth the cost of dying. I will carry you forever, my love, in every moment, every choice, every beat of a heart I no longer have. You were the one, you will always be the one." And somewhere beyond mortal understanding, Daisy smiled.